Megyn Kelly, welcome back to Most Powerful Women.
Hi there, it's great to be here. Hi, everybody. How's it going? Good.
So, Megyn, as Jen said, Megyn Kelly has had a very interesting career path. So she was a litigator for 7 years at Jones Day, and then she decided to become a television journalist. And you all know Megyn. And I'm curious, Megyn, watching the Brett Kavanaugh hearings last week and covering them, as a former litigator.
I did that for 9.5 years total.
9.5 years, litigator at Jones Day. I'd like to know how you looked at all of that as a litigator, as a journalist, and as a woman. And were there 3 different lenses that you were seeing that through?
Well, yeah. I mean, they're all connected, of course. But yes, when I was a litigator at Jones Day, I tried cases having to do with sexual harassment, among other cases. And so I understand the evidentiary burden and, you know, how to get over it. But I can't evaluate a hearing like that as a person or as a mother or as a woman, because in a way it would be a dereliction of duty. That was about evidence and facts. And so while I then went and had conversations that were private with my husband and my friends about my own feelings, and I definitely have a feeling about who is telling the truth and what I think about the other person, it's not for me to share with you publicly. It's not your business, and it's not appropriate for me as a journalist to be putting my opinion on you. My job as a journalist is to walk you through it, and as a legal analyst, to walk you through what are the facts, and what am I seeing as a journalist? And I'll give you, sort of the backdrop for Kavanaugh for me was when I went down to cover the Duke lacrosse case as a cub reporter. It was 2005 and 6. I had just started as a reporter a couple years earlier. And when I heard about those 3 guys who got accused, I was not that long out of college and law school, and I thought, they're probably derelicts and they did it. Mm-hmm. And the last thing Britt Hume, my boss in the DC bureau, said to me before I went to Durham was, keep an open mind. Yep. And it was a good check, just keep it like, I don't know whether they did it or not, actually. My own prior experience as a woman said, I know college boys, it doesn't mean that they necessarily engage in rape, but it just seemed before you got down there like, well, why would she make it up? So I went down there and just followed the facts, just followed the evidence with my open mind. And honestly, I was one of 2 reporters who did not get that case wrong. Really? I didn't go out there and say, they're innocent. But I also wasn't saying, believe women. Uh-huh. I just reported the facts, that's all. I reported when they found fingernails of hers in the trash can in their bathroom, and it had reportedly the boy's DNA on it. But then I also reported exclusively one night when they found a DNA test of the accuser that had the DNA of 5 other men, not one of which matched these 3 guys that she was accusing, right? And some people at that time would say, how can you not stand up for the woman? How, here's this woman, there's a class issue, there's a race issue, there's also, and all I could say was, I'm calling it like I see it. Yep. These are the facts. And the same approach, I think, has served me well during Kavanaugh.
So as a journalist now, your watchwords for all of us in the world watching this hearing evolve and lead to whatever we learn next week, what are your watchwords?
My watchwords? What do you mean? Like, what am I looking for?
Keep
right
an open
now?
mind.
Listen. Kavanaugh is so much worse in a way than what we saw in Duke, because at least there was a court in Duke. There was an evidentiary, trier of fact or arbiter. Now, we found out later that the DA in that case, who is now disbarred and went to jail for a day, was a corrupt individual who was exploiting this woman's obvious mental issues. She made the whole thing up. He allowed her. He did not do what he was required to do under the law. This situation is so much more fraught with peril in a way because it doesn't have any of the checks or balances of the legal system. Brett Kavanaugh is entitled to due process, but he's not necessarily going to get it. She is not going to be believed by most of those Republicans, no matter how credible she may seem. So the whole thing, in a way, is a farce. It was set up to be a farce. There is no impartial arbiter in that Senate hearing room or in the U.S. Senate. There are only politicians. And in a way, that's as it should be, because this is about the Senate's duty to advise and consent. This isn't about getting to the truth. We're not going to know the truth. We may have our beliefs, but we're not going to know. It's about them figuring out whether they want to confirm this guy. And I would submit to you that most of those senators have their minds made up, and did prior to ever hearing from Dr. Ford or Brett Kavanaugh. So it's going to be utterly unsatisfactory to almost all people.
And as a former litigator, is there a question that wasn't asked at the hearing of Kavanaugh or Blasey Ford that you would have loved to have asked?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, I saw what Rachel Mitchell was doing. I did appreciate what she was doing. Appreciate as in I understood. She was very politely trying to drive holes in Christine Blasey Ford's story. Just sort of exploit lacks of memory or inconsistencies in her story. But she was doing it gently, which was appropriate. And I could see she racked up some points. She did. If you paid attention as a litigator, you could see she was pointing out this woman doesn't remember a lot, and she's told inconsistent stories, and she said she hates to fly, but she'll fly to Costa Rica, and she'll fly to the French Polynesia, and it's just little by little, that's how you make your case as somebody who's cross-examining. You don't always have the big Perry Mason moment where you're like, aha, right? You just try to ding them up a little bit, ding them here, ding them there, and I believe that was appropriate, entirely appropriate, because I believe in an adversarial process. I think when somebody gets accused, they're entitled to not just a defense, but a vigorous defense. And all of you are well served by that. And she would be well served by that. A truth teller, if that is what Dr. Ford is, can withstand that kind of a cross-examination, because even when she might not know everything, or there might be a couple of inconsistencies because she's human, human beings watching it will walk away with a feel for, all right, that one was trying to get her, but I believed her explanation, right? I just think that people are smart and they can walk away with a feel. So I thought she did a fine job, and then I was very happy when the senators stepped in as well, because when we got to the part of the hearing where Brett Kavanaugh testified, he was entitled to have somebody there defending him. You couldn't have Rachel cross-examining Dr. Ford and cross-examining Brett Kavanaugh and the Democrats cross-examining Brett Kavanaugh, because then you walk away thinking there's only one possible truth teller in this whole process, and the viewers need to hear both sides.
Right. So Megyn's audience, who she spoke to every night, used to be an audience of influencers, a lot of men, policymakers. Now your audience, Megyn, every morning on Megyn Kelly Today is basically women who are at home. And I'm not saying that is necessarily a less important audience, but I'm curious how you like serving each audience. Do you miss talking to those influential policymakers and men at night?
So my audience on the Kelly File was 50-50, male, female. So it wasn't, it wasn't all men. And my audience on Megyn Kelly Today is largely female, but has a substantial population of men, and actually does involve a lot of working women who work outside of the home. I didn't know that either. I didn't know what to expect, but we looked at it. A lot of people have TVs in their workplace, and they watch it. They work from home. So it is an eclectic mix. But look, that sort of gets to one of the reasons we're here, right? Which is, what is power? Right? What is power?
And I asked you that a few years ago.
And my feeling on it now, because I've spent some time thinking about it, especially in light of my career change and just who I am at this point in my life. Power is the ability to matter in the area that is important to you.
That's great.
And so when I was doing my job at Fox News in the prime time there, I absolutely had some power in the political sphere to press politicians on nonsense positions and so on. But what was not apparent to the people who watched me or anybody else was I was failing as a mother. I had 3 young kids who were babies when I started that job, so I could see them all the time during the day. But 3 years into it, 2 out of 3 were in school full time. And right when they got home, I would leave for my job. And I would literally only have breakfast with them Monday through Friday, and then I would not see my children. Right. I was terribly unhappy. It wasn't enough for me. And so I had great influence to, beat up on Newt Gingrich if I wanted to,
Yeah.
which I sometimes did. But I was having no influence, next to no influence, with the people who were most important to me. So am I more powerful now or less powerful now? I submit I am more powerful than I've ever been in the area that matters to me.
That's wonderful. And Megyn, your children are now what age?
Now they're 9, 7, and 5.
Uh-huh.
And you know what I realized? This is something for people to consider, you know, because I know a lot of women who work so hard and we all try to balance it and we all feel like we're failing and we all feel like we're screwing up our kids and we're screwing up our job and neither one is getting enough attention, right? I mean, I don't know a working woman who has children who doesn't feel that way. But I will say, because we spend a lot of time building each other up and saying, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I wish somebody had said to me when I was not seeing my kids for those years, it might not be okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, when I got back home, if you will, you know, I mean, now that I'm on this schedule, I see them all the time. We have dinner together 7 nights a week, my husband and my kids and I. And what I realized is my husband was so good at not complaining, but I realized he was dealing with a lot of stress, you know? It's hard having 3 kids at home at night by yourself. And what I realized, right? But my husband was like, thank God you're back. And just over the past year, my daughter, she just finished first grade, now she's in second. And, you know, social stuff comes up. And night after night, I was able to get in that bed with her. And, you know, I found out the thing that my mom friends told me, which is they say all the stuff that matters right before they go to bed. Yeah. Right? Which I didn't know. I hadn't been there. They say nothing of consequence over breakfast. Nothing. So now, night after night, I'm next to Yardley, and she's only, you know, at that time 6, now 7. She's throwing these things at me, these questions. I don't know if I'm answering them correctly, but I was there.
Yeah.
And I talked to her night after night, and she'd feed back to me how it worked and so on.
And Yardley is 7.
And that, Pattie, is a win, you know? I don't know if I said the right stuff, but I was there. Yes. And there's no substitute for it. As they always say, you're not going to get that time back. Would I have rather been on national television at night with the Klieg lights, you know, like this? For me, as a professional, that was somewhat enriching, but it doesn't hold a candle to this other thing.
Who has a question? Okay, I will ask mine. So Megyn, Megyn's show, Megyn Kelly Today, has been a ratings struggle. I know this month your ratings are the best that they've been since February, and you have nice momentum right now. I would think that to the point of the question that I asked about, do you miss talking to the big guns of Washington? And a few years ago, the sort of people did not have the voice that they have today in the Me Too movement. Yep. And I think the Me Too movement is something that you have embraced and you have presented, you kind of own it. And frankly, it's helped your ratings.
Well, the Me Too movement, I separate the Me Too movement from ratings. There are some things that are more important than ratings.
Okay.
And that, to be perfectly honest with you, it wasn't readily apparent that that was going to rate at all when we first started doing it, because it's morning television. I think there was a belief that in morning television, you know, maybe there's not an appetite for something that shocking or dark. I mean, we had women on talking about their sexual assaults, their rapes, but neither my executive producer nor I cared about whether it would rate or whether people thought it was too dark for morning television, because it was important. And so I own that unabashedly. I would say one thing, though. Neither while doing that coverage nor now did I ever lose sight of the need for due process. And I do want to urge my fellow women to remember that, because we need men to be our partners in this revolution. Yes. And if our message to them is, you have no rights, when you get accused by somebody who happens to be female, you're done. She gets all the rights and you get none. What do you think that's going to do to them and their support of our movement? It's not going to go well. And they're not going to say that publicly. But it is a reality. So they get due process. We don't get believed just because of our gender. Being a woman and making an accusation, it entitles you to a fair hearing and to someone who is open-minded and who will not dismiss you just because of your gender and because of the history for women who try to come forward. But it doesn't mean that we sacrifice all fairness toward men who happen to be our husbands and our sons and our brothers and our dads, and who we also love and need on our side.
We do, and we are going to continue this conversation with the next 2 sessions. So Megyn, thank you for coming back, and we want you back again.
Pattie.
Wonderful. Thank you.